We have a special live hashtag FoodNotPhones report just in time for Thanksgiving. Acosta Group, an important partner in our hashtag FoodNotPhones initiative, conducted a consumer survey. The role of phones at the dinner table, which exposed significant cell phone use during family mealtimes, but found that cell phones are not welcome at the holiday table. Joining us is Kathy Risch, Senior VP of Shopper Insights and Leadership at Acosta Group, to tell us more. Kathy, welcome to the Lempert Report Live.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Phil.
So tell us, what did you find out?
Yes, well, we conducted this survey just a couple of short weeks ago among our shopper community of consumers across the U.S. And we wanted to get an understanding of how people are actually sitting down at the table together for mealtime and the role that phones play. So on this first slide, I just wanted to share with you my favorite insight from the entire study, which essentially tells us that the family mealtime is alive and well in the U.S. So this is great news that 64% of U.S. households are actually sitting down for mealtime, at dinner together to share in the meal. And that's even higher among households with kids at 77%.
So one of the things that really has happened over the past 10 or so years is FMI, with their Family Meals Initiative, really highlighted the fact that people weren't eating together. And because of their campaign and retailers throughout the nation, and folks like Acosta Group getting behind it, it looks like we've been able to turn people back to the dinner table and family time. I know, Sally, you guys do that, right?
We do. And that is so great to hear that 77% with kids are experiencing a family mealtime. So what a great campaign that FMI put together. And it's good news to hear that we are doing that.
So, Kathy, what else did you find?
Yes, and I do wanted to mention one more quick thing, that I do believe that the pandemic and the time together at home, the forced time we had at eating meals at home is responsible for a lot of the behavior that way. And so it was just very encouraging to see how much households are still sharing mealtime now that we're post-pandemic. So,
and even more important than ever, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. One of the other things we asked consumers about was just how they feel, or actually just asking about how they feel about phones being used at the table during mealtime. So we're here to talk about, the usage of phones and how much it's done, whether they like it or not. And this was just literally to find out, how do you feel about the usage of phones? And
so, Kathy, let me interrupt. I'm not going to tell you how I feel, but I have a feeling that the way I feel and the way Kathy feels and the way Tony feels about this, we're all going to align with what you found from the Acosta Group, consumer panel of, I think you've got over 40,000 people. So what did you find out about how people feel when people use their phones at mealtime?
Well, most don't like it. And interestingly, 42% feel that it's just downright rude. And so it's just very interesting. But I would like to call out the key difference here is by age. So it's much more accepting the younger the consumer versus the older. So if you look at just the numbers on the page here, that only 23% of Gen Z feel that it's downright rude, whereas you have a much higher number with the older boomers. And it's just to show you that as the age got older, the tolerance and appeal definitely dies down.
So, Sally, don't you think that a lot of that has to do with whether it's Gen Z or millennials or Alpha? I mean, they've grown up with phones. We didn't. So as a result, we're probably a little less tolerant. What do you think?
100%, Phil. And it's not surprising to me that the younger generations want to have those phones. They want to be connected all of the time. They're tapped into their social media profiles. They like to take pictures. They like to take pictures of their food. So I can see why these younger generations are telling us that they're okay with it, but the older generations are, no, let's put them away.
And Kathy, I love the fact that, the way you worded the survey, that 23% of generation says it's rude and 58% of boomers say it's rude. So, I love that. You're hitting it strong for us.
Great. Well, now that we know how people feel about the usage of phones and kind of the mixed feeling that I talked about, we did also ask about just how much our phones, I'm sure that's what everyone is wondering now, is how much our phones actually used during the occasion, the mealtime occasion where they are eating with others at the table. And a majority of the country has that happening at least some of the time. Now, it's not all of the time, as you can see from our numbers, but a good majority of the time, they'll say that on occasion phones are being used. But you can see how much this does, again, vary by households. That we spoke to Gen Z and millennial households versus the older Gen X, and then especially the boomers. And the actual occasions where there's phones used at the table is dramatically different.
So what did you find out specifically about Thanksgiving?
Yeah, this is exciting with Thanksgiving coming up. And we knew that this was a very different meal time than the average typical week. So we wanted to understand how phones would be used and if there would be any rules. And interestingly, almost 40% of households are actually not going to allow phones at the table at all, 4 in 10. And so that is a very interesting nuance that already ahead of Thanksgiving, they're planning to set that policy and that rule and not allow phones during the Thanksgiving meal.
And any other insights about Thanksgiving?
Well, one thing when I was growing up, we always had a kids' table. So
yeah, we did too. Yep.
Large gathering. So you also had a table. Sally, did you have a kids' table?
We did have a kids' table. It was in the garage.
Great. So you had one.
Yes.
Among households with kids, 36% will be having a separate table for the kids. So I think that has a lot of implications as we talk about phone usage at the table. And we talked about 4 in 10 having a rule of not allowing phones at the table. I think there's a whole other dynamic of, will the kids' table have a different rule than the adult table? Will there be a universal kind of understanding? I guess I kind of envision a lot more phones being used at the kids' table than when I was growing up.
So Kathy, what comes to mind is when I was younger, obviously pre-cell phone days, it wasn't an issue about cell phones at the kids' table. The reason for the kids' table was, one, that we wouldn't annoy our parents, and number two, because they had wine and they didn't want to give us wine. So I think that's the difference. So Kathy, thanks for all your valuable insights. Kathy's going to stay with us. So stay tuned for our Q&A at the end of TLR Live. And Kathy will be back to take any questions or anything more that you're looking for. Now, for the complete survey, just go to FoodNotPhones.com, scroll down, and you have the whole Acosta Group presentation right there about everything that they learned about cell phone usage at mealtime. So thanks for supporting #FoodNotPhones, Kathy, this Thanksgiving.
Be sure to visit supermarketguru.com for the latest marketing analysis, issues, and trends. And don't forget to join us back here next Tuesday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern for more.